Hey everybody, welcome to Project Geekology, a podcast located in Neverland and in a never-ending fight with a pirate named Captain Hook. I am one half of your host, Anthony, and joining me, as always, the Lord of the MCU timeline,
Dakota. Wow, the Lord of the MCU timeline? High praise. Of course, if I ever visited Neverland, I'd instantly forget it, or at least within a couple days, I would totally forget who I am and, you know, any close attachments to me. But it'd be fun at the same time. We should get right into the podcast.
Yes, we should. This is episode 8.
Which, by the way, speaking of episode 8, most podcasts don't last more than 7 episodes. That's the average. So
really,
the fact that we are over this slump is a very, very good sign. And we hit 500 downloads this past week.
That's awesome. Yeah,
the majority of those was our 0th episode. Our introduction has like 150 something listens, maybe more than that at this point. But we're happy that you guys are still listening to us, and hopefully we get some new listens soon. So please be sure to, I guess, retweet this or, you know, share this around on social media, email your friends, whatever you cool kids do these days. I don't know.
Yes, so as we said before, this is episode 8, and in this episode we're going to be talking about the 1991 film Hook, starring Robin Williams, Dustin Hoffman, Julia Roberts, and many more. This is a different episode. I would say that this is probably one of the less geekier things, but there is a following for this movie. Before we jump into that, let's talk about what we've been up to this week. Dakota, what have you been up to this week?
Not too much. Last time I told you that I was starting to play Genshin Impact. I played a little bit of that this week, but really I haven't really had the opportunity to sit down and play too much of that. Jen and I watched another Robin Williams movie, Dead Poets Society.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie. I haven't seen it in years, but and it was Jen's first time, and she loves poetry, so it was like right up her alley.
Ooh.
Not a happy ending on that one.
No,
but great film. But we're not going to be talking about Dead Poets Society today. No. I've been editing a lot, and I've been writing a script for a video that's coming down the pipeline. And yeah, you guys will be able to check that out on Geekritique. Should be November 1st, so that's a Sunday, next Sunday after this is released. So I'm really excited about that project. It's going to be a really big video for hopefully the channel, but you know, it'll be a cool video. You'll hopefully learn a lot. But other than that, I haven't really been doing too much. What about you, Anthony? What have you been up to?
Well, I've been rewatching One Punch Man. I forgot how funny it was. I hadn't seen the first season in a long time because there was such a huge gap between season 1 and season 2. Mm-hmm. So I went back and I've been rewatching it, and it is just, I forgot how ridiculous and how hilarious that anime is. And we definitely need to do an episode on that anime because it's fantastic. Yeah. I forgot like how great it was. I watched Hook this week just to kind of refresh my memory on that movie, and I've been bouncing back and forth between Genshin Impact and Overwatch because I've been trying to get those Overwatch
the new
Halloween skins.
Yeah.
Man, I got that Diva one and I absolutely love it.
Cool.
Well, yeah, so that's really all that I've been up to. And with that being said, Dakota and I have actually decided what topic we're going to be doing next week. This is probably the earliest that we have decided on a topic, and that's going to be Ready Player One. We'll be talking a bit about the book. We'll be talking a bit about the movie and some of their differences. I'm really excited because I love both.
Mm-hmm. There are a lot of differences, but I think what you'll find and what we'll kind of cover is like how well, even though there's a lot that's different from the movie and the book, Spielberg somehow finds the heart of the story and is able to capture it on screen. So,
right.
Is he capable of capturing the heart of Peter Pan? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Lots of Spielberg recently. All right, so let's just jump into the discussion of 1991's Hook. Anthony, when was the last time that you saw Hook?
Well, besides this past week, that was probably when I was a kid. It'd been a long time.
I remember being in my grandparents' house watching it on the couch, and I loved it when I was a kid. And I had a lot of... Actually, I don't think I had a lot of nostalgia for it, just because I was probably too young to really grow nostalgic for it.
Right.
Because it came out the year that we were born. So
Yes.
we caught it on VHS, whatever, at the time. So this was fun revisiting. I had to, unfortunately, pay for the rental twice because I rented it last week, but only got halfway through, and I was like, I can't finish watching this. And then we decided we were going to do a show on it, so I had to rent it again today. But it's all right. I actually liked the second half of the movie better than the first half.
Yes, I do agree with that. The first half is a bit... It kind of drags on a little bit. Mm-hmm. But then when you get into that second half, it's really entertaining. That's where the camp kind of like kicks in. It's really campy.
Kicks into high
gear,
yeah.
Man, something that I really enjoy about that movie is just the sets. You know, it has like that classic like kind of 80s, 90s like realistic set, but you can tell that it's fake.
That's one thing that I mentioned several times to Jen when we were watching this. There was just so much to enjoy about the actual set design and the costumage that they did for pretty much everyone. And it's not necessarily the best sets ever, but they put a lot of time and thought into each item.
Yeah.
And I think that really brings Neverland to life in a way that we've never really seen before.
Talking about this movie is a bit odd because it's a bit of a weird dream. It's kind of a sequel, would you say, to like Peter Pan? But it's its own thing. It's kind of weird.
So yes, it was intended to be a sequel to the Peter Pan book by J.M. Barrie and the Walt Disney film. Even though it's technically it's not a Disney movie. They actually do take certain stuff from the movie side of the Peter Pan thing. The old 50s movie.
Yes. And
they carry it over into the story, but most of it is from the book. Most of the references that they make are from the book. So I like little stuff like that with the references. And Jen and we recently read Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. It's a classic story, and it's one of those movies, or it's one of those stories that I wonder if it even would be popular still if it wasn't for the Walt Disney film. You know what I'm saying? Like that, Alice in Wonderland, Pinocchio, Snow White. Would we even know these stories nowadays? Would we have the collective memory of these characters and stuff if it weren't for the Disney movies that adapted those stories? It's an interesting thought, and I don't think that this movie would exist if the animated film hadn't come out before it. So for those of you who don't remember, Hook is the story that takes place, it's got to be like 80, 90 years after the events of the Peter Pan novel. Wendy is now a very aged woman. She's like in her hundreds, I think, at this point. She's like really old. And Peter has fallen in love with the granddaughter, Moira. He decides to live in the real world, which means that he's no longer susceptible to never aging. So he finally does age, but after leaving Neverland, he loses all memory of his time in Neverland. It's an interesting concept, and it's kind of hard to wrap your head around because this person, Wendy, in the movie is the real life version of Wendy from, I guess, the cartoon from the 50s.
Right.
And J.M. Barrie, the real life author, was in the movie her next door neighbor and loved her story so much he wrote a story about it, which would be Peter Pan and Wendy and their adventures in Neverland.
Yeah, that was cool.
It's an interesting concept, but it's weird that Peter, growing up around Wendy and Moira and everyone, doesn't have any memories of Peter Pan's adventures, considering his life is so tied to this person. And when he goes to Neverland, he has no memory of Hook. He has no memory of who Peter Pan is. He has no memory. It's a weird thing that he just doesn't. It's like a mental block, even though everyone around him knows.
That's the only way that anybody could probably explain that, because it made no sense that Wendy had remembered everything. Her brother, what was his name?
I forget if that was Michael or
lost
John.
his marbles.
Yeah.
That was the youngest one, the one with the teddy bear, I think, right?
I believe so. Yeah, I can't remember at this point.
Okay.
There were certain like moments in this movie that I was just like, this would be a passably good movie if they didn't have like these corny characters.
I lost my marbles.
See, I didn't lose my marbles at all. Yeah, it was weird, but it's still charming. It's hard for me to like say it's a good movie, but I did enjoy it, and I think that's partly because I grew up with it, partly because I have some memory of it. But characters like that really drag it down. What did you think of when they finally got into Neverland and Peter still doesn't remember his memory, or he doesn't have his memories like that? There's a good like 20 to 30 minutes of time spent in Neverland before Peter even remembers who he is. What do you take from those scenes? Because that's where the film originally lost me, and I wasted my first rental.
So yeah, that was a weird spot in the movie. I think in that first 30 minutes of Peter being back in Neverland, that was when the movie kind of started catching me a little bit more. Yeah, it was a little weird and confusing, but Dustin Hoffman as Captain Hook was really interesting. I think that he captured that character pretty well, because when I think back on the cartoon on how Captain Hook acted, and I see the way that Dustin Hoffman acted as Hook, it was pretty well done. Them figuring out that Peter Banning was really Peter Pan, and they're like, oh my gosh, like, is this really him? He's old, and he's like, oh, he's older, and he's kind of wimpy now, and this can't be him. And so I guess they kind of run by some code of honor, because he allowed Tinkerbell to take Peter Banning to kind of shift him back into Peter Pan, and that was interesting. One of the scenes that I really enjoyed was the food scene.
Oh man, we were on totally opposite ends of the spectrum there, because you like it, I'm just like, that's the worst scene ever.
Dude, I liked it because it reminds me of being a kid and just pretending to eat a meal. Like, you remember being a kid and like you're like, man, like I want, if I had this, I'd be like, you just chomp right into it. Kind of when he tapped into that imagination and he started seeing all that. It was a weird scene, because I mean, like, it didn't really seem like he tapped into his imagination in that moment, because like he just hit something and some like random splooge just like hit.
What was that? It wasn't like, was it like a cream? Was it like a yogurt?
Like 90% of what was on that table looked like some kind of,
it looked disgusting,
icing,
right?
It looks weird. Yeah, like, I mean, something that you would imagine the Tea Party and Alice in Wonderland type.
Yeah, it was like
a cross between that and the Cat in the Hat or something like that.
It was like a sherbet textured and colored substance that was just everywhere, and it sucked to everything. So my enjoyment of the film is different than yours, clearly. I actually did enjoy the beginning of the movie, where Peter is not who he was, basically. He's, I don't know what he does. I'm assuming he's like a businessman or a lawyer or whatever, I forget.
Right. I don't know. It was weird, because at first he sounded like he was in acquisitions, and then it sounded like he was a lawyer. Like, I could not.
That was like real estate. I have no idea. Yeah,
I could not pinpoint what his job was.
I think he like works on companies to make them more profitable. I think that's what they were trying to get at. But anyway, I thought it was an interesting concept, because what would Peter Pan do once he leaves Neverland? And clearly he totally forgot about who he was.
I know, that was...
He totally forgot about why he was in Neverland in the first place. And the film questions that. They take those themes of forgetfulness that's pretty synonymous with Neverland. You don't get it too much in the movie, but in the book, very shortly after entering Neverland, Wendy and her brothers begin forgetting the real world. And it's very easy to imagine how Peter Pan could have forgotten what it would be like to live a normal life. And it's an interesting twist that once he goes back to the real world, he totally forgets about Neverland. So that the theme of forgetfulness is still intact in this movie. And even his kids, what's his kid's name? Jack? I think Jack forgets about him and what his home really was. And it's a trick of Neverland that just keeps you in this endless cycle of Lost Boys versus pirates. But yeah, I liked the beginning because it was an interesting thing, but it took too long to get into Neverland. And I think it was very contrived. Once they got to Neverland, it was like Camp City. Like, everything was super campy. The Lost Boys were out there, bro. Like, they had, like, ramps. They had, like, parasail, skateboards.
It was definitely a level in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. Like,
it was...
their treehouse thing. It was crazy.
That was the most elaborate set for anything that I could like think of on the top of my head. But yeah, it's
dude, they had that huge slingshot.
It was something. There was like an incredible amount of like fat shaming for that poor kid. What was his name? They named him Thud. Yeah, I looked at his like IMDb. The character's name is Thud, but the fat black kid that like he plays Thudball, and he basically rolls down a staircase. Really weird.
Oh yeah.
At the end of the movie, I was like, that is the most disturbing thing. Like his legs just like contort, and he becomes a roly-poly basically.
That was like a cartoon moment right there.
Yeah, there were some moments that really work though, and that's why this movie is such a mixed bag in my opinion.
It is. Like it didn't do so well with critics, but with the audience, it kind of struck a chord with them. I could understand why there's a following behind it, but I can also see why it didn't do so well critically.
Oh yeah.
I know that's. I think that kind of goes with the whole mixed bag.
I think it's confused about what kind of film it wants to be. Does it want to be super campy, or does it want to be a heartwarming story about parenthood? Because that's another theme that they went full steam with, that they took kind of from the novel and the movie. If you remember correctly, when Wendy comes to Neverland, she's there because the kids need a mother. They need someone to tuck them in at night. They need someone to tell stories to and cook meals for. And all these lost boys are literally lost because they don't have parents. And this is where they go. So they play on those themes, like, what if Peter was a father, but he lost his kids, or his kids lost him? And it's him trying to get those kids back. So it's an interesting thing. And then, like, there's the one line with, like, Rufio. Like, he dies just like...
I wish I had a dad.
So what are your thoughts on Rufio? Rufio.
I liked his character. I liked that he was kind of like that kid that filled in the spot for a Peter Pan when he left. Mm-hmm. He essentially became the new Peter Pan for that group. And I don't blame him for doubting him when he came back.
Oh, no.
Because, it's like, yo, this guy, he disappeared, looks nothing like how he did the last time we saw him. I think Rufio was a needed character for that character development for Peter Banning to become Peter Pan. His character was probably one of the few that wasn't the campiest. Like, there was, like, Thud was, like, one of the most, like, campy characters out of all of them.
Yeah, it was hard. I agree. I think Rufio is an interesting enough character that he kind of writes himself a little bit, you kind of understand that there's a power vacuum of sorts, or a leadership vacuum, after Peter leaves. Although it's not clear if everyone there remembered Peter, or if these are new kids who only know the story of Peter, you know? Because I think in the book, a lot of the Lost Boys came back to the real world, if I remember correctly at the end of it. So I assume most of these Lost Boys are new kids on the block. And they keep calling Peter the Pan instead of Peter Pan. So it's almost like he's a legend to them.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, he did seem much more of a legend to them than
a friend that
somebody.
They knew, remember?
Yeah.
It's interesting. There's actually, like, the more I talk about it, the more I like can appreciate it. Dustin Hoffman, man, talk about a performance. Like, I mean, it was not a fantastic performance. Like, it wasn't like an acting. It's not Oscar worthy for sure.
Right.
But it's fun. He like really hammed it up, and he did. Yeah.
He did. Hook is an extremely campy character in general, and I think he lived up to that. I think he did really well with him having that fear of the clocks and the ticking that Captain Hook did in the animated film. And so yeah, I think he did a great job for Captain Hook. And when I mean great job, I don't mean that, yeah, like you said, it's not some Oscar-worthy performance, but it is a worthy performance for Captain Hook. I think that he's been the best live-action Captain Hook that I've seen.
Yeah, and you think of, I guess perhaps nowadays you wouldn't have such a campy performance of Hook. They would probably go for something more real. Or I kind of picture like the Joker almost, you know? He's a character kind of similar-ish to the Joker. He's got some unknown past. He's got problems. He's maniacal for the sake of being maniacal, and he has a villain. And you had the 1989 Batman film with Jack Nicholson being the Joker. And he was super campy, and it was a fun performance. Not Oscar-worthy, but it was campy, and it worked for that film. It worked for what they had going in Gotham in that movie. But moving forward to 2012, I believe The Dark Knight came out, when Heath Ledger reinvented what the Joker meant. So I feel like nowadays they would do a different take on Hook. But for the time period that this film was made in, that was the type of villain that they wanted to create. And I kind of like that. I kind of like how they stuck to their guns, and I kind of like how it's pretty much a faithful carryover from the book and film. One thing one character I didn't particularly care for was Tinkerbell.
Julia Roberts.
Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily Julia Roberts' fault. I don't think she looks like Tinkerbell, first of all. The book describes her looking very differently, and the movie also describes her looking differently. But also, it's more the acting, or what the script gave her. So, if you recall Tinkerbell from the movie, she's feisty. She is always getting angry with Peter. She's always she's nagging, but she's also kind of sweet at the same time. Julia Roberts' take on the character was very, very different, where it was like all sweet all the time, or all lovey-dovey all the time. And it was interesting. And, you know, you do get the hints from the book and film that Tinkerbell is in love with Peter, but she can never have him. So it was kind of nice to actually have some payoff in this movie, if that makes sense.
Yes, there was that scene where she grew to his size for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't how was she able to do that? Like, I don't remember. What
in
was
the
it
movie,
that she did?
In the movie, she claimed that it was her one wish for herself.
Oh.
I don't remember if fairies even have wishes, but I guess in this movie they do, and that's fine. Whatever, it's their movie, make their own rules, whatever. But yeah, it was a weird. I kind of liked it though. She finally got what she's always wanted but it couldn't last. And that's kind of the story of Peter Pan. Nothing really lasts about him. One thing I really, really love. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking more than usual on this podcast. I'm not giving you an opportunity to talk. There's the line when Peter and Hook are fighting, and it's a classic line from the book, and I think they use it in the movie as well. To die would be a great adventure.
To die would be a great adventure.
And then Hook says,
death is the only adventure you have left.
The classic line is kind of like twisted in this. And then at the very end of the movie, Peter says something like, to live will be a great adventure. So it's kind of like, yeah, Peter can stay in Neverland forever, but he also has the opportunity now to live a life and remember who he is at the same time and be there for his children. So it's kind of, there's a lot of little heartwarming messages in it that kind of tie back to the original themes of the story of Peter Pan, and I like it for that. But for everything else, it's not that good.
Well, something else that I noticed about Captain Hook was that Captain Hook was actually a learning tool for Peter. Because remember there was that scene that Captain Hook had with his son Jack, where he set up that whole like baseball game, and like he was like kind of there for him. He was being that father figure that Jack wanted. And so it showed, and so Peter was kind of sneaking up to steal his hook, and so he caught a glimpse of that, and it really showed him that it meant a lot to his son that he was there.
Yeah.
Or that he wanted him to be there, you know?
That was actually a really good scene. And again, the sets in this movie are incredible. Like, it's very, like, I can imagine every set. Like, I don't have to think very hard. You can picture...
Right.
Very, very strong imagery on, like, the ships that they built, the treehouse, the tunnel underneath the tree to their old home, the baseball field that they build, the Hook's little suite that he has, and all the clocks, and of course the big great crocodile. There's so much like really interesting imagery in this movie that really sticks with you, and I think that's where the nostalgia for the most part is. But like you were saying, I forget if you said it on the podcast or off, but you were saying something along the lines of, it's like a dream. You remember it in like a haze. And I think that's because the story kind of goes everywhere and nowhere at the same time.
Those sets that you were talking about, it's something that I would imagine what a Disney ride would look like. Maybe one of those like walk-on set type of rides like that Disney has.
Like the Tom Sawyer Island one, or the Swiss Family Robinson treehouse in Disney World.
Yes. So that's something that I kind of pictured those sets. Like, they look clearly fake.
Oh yeah.
But they're still impressive.
Yeah, I did appreciate that, and I can appreciate the film for that.
The practical effects, pretty much.
Yes, this is a time just before CGI was about to take off. I don't know if there was any CGI in this movie. I don't think there was. I think there was just layering over film and superimposing images like Tinkerbell flying or whatever. Spielberg's next film would be CGI heavy. It would be the first time in his career that he uses CGI a lot in a film, and that's Jurassic Park. But we'll talk about that another time. It's an interesting jump, though, from this movie to Jurassic Park. And then what's even a crazier jump between this movie and that movie is his next movie, Schindler's List.
Oh, man, that was such a good film.
Did you know that he released Schindler's List and Jurassic Park in the same year?
Really?
Yeah, and Schindler's List...
Was it really that same year?
1993.
Wow.
Yeah. Schindler's List won the Best Picture that year, and Jurassic Park became the highest grossing film ever that year. So I was like, that was the best year of his career, man.
Oh my gosh. 93.
But 91, not so much. Although this was a commercial success, and people do look fondly on the film, I don't think many people would consider it like a canon sequel to the story of Peter Pan, even though it tries very hard to fill that role.
I was impressed with the effects with Peter and Tinkerbell, and showing that Tinkerbell was small.
Okay.
Like the way that they had set it up, though, that effect when she was in the dollhouse, it looked really, really cool. it didn't look bad for its time. You know, there were some of the moments, like the moment where he first meets Tinkerbell, and it's like obviously like somebody like kind of dangling something around that's like really shiny.
Okay.
And it looks so funny. It kind of made me think of the fly scene from Karate Kid.
Okay, yeah.
Like there's
yeah.
somebody there just like kind of like bouncing this like fairy looking thing around, and and one of the things that I liked, he had said something like
Firefly from hell.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. And doesn't he hit it he like swats it away?
and then he says something else that like made me laugh after that too.
Well, Robin
Like,
Williams
something
is like just
that bug's gotta go or something like that. It was funny though. Like when he's like Firefly from hell, that I was like, oh my gosh, it was good, man.
Hook is.
They said that
Like you were talking
it had
about
its
with the
moments.
effects with Tink. I think that I'm sure this wasn't the first time they'd done like miniature people next to
Right,
big people,
yeah.
but I think that style of film would get better and better as the 90s moved along, because then you had films like The Borrowers and Indian in the Cupboard. Indian in the Cupboard was also produced by Kathleen Kennedy, who produced this film as well. And I don't know if you remember the Indian in the Cupboard at all, but
oh yes, yeah, I remember that.
but
The Indian toy that becomes real.
yes, and I think that technology or that like effect of like making a smaller person next to a larger person gets better as the 90s go on. And
Yes,
that's a film I
definitely.
need to...
It didn't look bad it didn't look bad in Hook though.
No, it didn't.
I would say that like I was pretty surprised how well it looked for the time.
Yeah, I could tell every time that they were like flying that it was on strings and stuff, and like they were moving,
yes.
they were on like a green screen and stuff like that, so that was very noticeable. But overall, I mean, it was campy, but it was enjoyable.
Yes, I agree.
Any last thoughts, Anthony, on Hook?
I understand why it has its cult following. I see what's enjoyable about it. Would I say it's one of my favorite movies? No. But I do look fond on it. It's always nice to see Robin Williams in a film. I think he kind of brings his own magic to a film. And so seeing him doing his thing in that film, it was nice. You know, was it one of the better films that he was in? No. But I don't think it was the worst.
No, I don't think so. I agree. It's always good to go back to Robin Williams movies because he brings his all to them. He really puts his heart into the roles that he embodies, whether they're good roles or not.
Right.
And this is one of them that he does a really good job of. You know, he really embodies Peter Pan by the end of the film, and I keep saying really. Anyway, I really enjoy this movie. Even though it's like not a good movie. It's not a good movie.
It's the best 90s movie. No, I'm just kidding.
No. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening up to this point. Please be sure to follow us. In the show notes, we'll have linked our Instagrams and Twitter handles, so you can join us over there. Be sure to share this podcast or your favorite of our episodes that we've released if you want to see the show continue to grow. I know that Anthony and I are both very passionate about it. We both enjoy filming it every week, and we're trying to make it better and better. So if you have any tips and tricks as to how we can make this better, if you have any cheat codes we can use, we'd love to hear them. Send them our way, please.
That was good because you said film.
Did I actually?
Yeah, you did.
Dang, man. I'm so used to being on Geekritique that like I will never like shake that thing of we're filming or whatever.
Right. You when you text me like, oh, when do you want to film? The other day, like I mean, like I understood what you're talking about. Right. It kind of made me chuckle though. I was like, oh, film. I think I even texted you. I was like, LOL, film.
Yeah.
Yes, with that, we're at the end of our episode. Like Dakota said, join us on Twitter and our Instagram. We post our updates and releases mostly on Twitter. We also post our upcoming and our releases on Instagram too. Our Twitter is at pgeekology and our Instagram is Project Geekology, all one word. And yes, we will post it in the show notes, so if that's better for you, go check that out. And yes, have a great rest of your week. Stay safe and look out for our next episode, which will be on Ready Player One. We will be talking about the book and the film, and I am very stoked on that because I love both. Dakota, I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I hope you are ready for next week because it is going to be a doozy.
Yes, we're gonna dig deep into Easter eggs and cheat codes and VR. All right, guys, thank you so much. Have a good one.
So, your adventures are over.
Oh no. To live will be an awfully big adventure.